Pizza. Just hearing the word makes most people's mouths water. It's one of the world's most beloved foods, consumed by billions and found in virtually every corner of the globe. From the bustling streets of New York to the quiet villages of Japan, from fancy restaurants to college dorm rooms, pizza has conquered the planet. But how did a simple flatbread eaten by poor workers in Naples become humanity's favorite food? The journey of pizza from ancient flatbreads to modern delivery apps is a story of immigration, innovation, and the irresistible combination of bread, cheese, and tomato. Long before anyone uttered the word pizza, humans were making flatbreads and topping them with whatever they had on hand. The concept is almost as old as bread itself. Archaeological evidence shows that even 7,000 years ago, people were baking flatbreads, and it didn't take long for someone to realize that adding toppings made them even better. The ancient Egyptians, masters of bread making, topped their flatbreads with herbs and oils, creating what we might recognize as a very distant ancestor of today's pizza. The ancient world was full of pizza-like foods. Persian soldiers serving under Darius the Great in the 6th century BCE allegedly baked flatbreads on their battle shields, topping them with cheese and dates, though this story might be more legend than fact. What we know for certain is that the ancient Greeks made a flatbread called plakous, flavored with herbs, onion, cheese, and garlic. They even had sweet versions topped with honey and fruit, which they offered to the gods. The Romans took this concept further, creating various topped breads with names like focaccia, which survives to this day. Perhaps the closest ancient relative to modern pizza came from the Roman dish called libum or adorea. The Roman statesman Cato the Elder even left us a recipe from around 160 BCE for a cheese flatbread that sounds remarkably pizza-like. These Roman flatbreads spread throughout the empire, evolving into regional variations that still exist today, from Catalonian coca to Middle Eastern manakish to Indian naan. But none of these were quite pizza as we know it, because they were all missing one crucial ingredient that wouldn't arrive in Europe for another 1,500 years. The real story of pizza begins not in ancient times, but in Renaissance Naples, a bustling port city that by the 1700s had become one of Europe's largest cities. Naples was a city of extremes, magnificent palaces for the wealthy and desperate poverty for the masses who crowded into its narrow streets. These working poor, known as lazzaroni, needed food that was cheap, portable, and filling. Street vendors began selling flatbreads that workers could fold and eat while walking, the original food on the go. But these early Neapolitan flatbreads still weren't quite pizza. They were typically topped with simple ingredients like oil, garlic, and small fish. The transformation into true pizza required an ingredient that had only recently arrived from the New World: the tomato. When tomatoes first came to Europe from the Americas in the 16th century, most Europeans viewed them with deep suspicion. They belonged to the nightshade family, which included poisonous plants, and their soft red appearance when ripe seemed somehow sinister. Wealthy Europeans grew them as exotic ornamental plants, but wouldn't dream of eating them. The poor of Naples, however, couldn't afford to be picky. By the late 1700s, desperate Neapolitans began adding tomatoes to their flatbreads, and something magical happened. The acidity of the tomatoes perfectly complemented the bread and oil, creating a combination that was both delicious and affordable. By the early 1800s, these pizzas, the word likely derives from the Latin pinza, meaning to pound or stamp, had become the defining street food of Naples. But respectable society still looked down on pizza as disgusting peasant food, something dirty and déclassé. The most famous story in pizza history supposedly occurred in 1889, though modern historians debate its authenticity. According to legend, King Umberto I and Queen Margherita of Savoy visited Naples and, tired of French cuisine, requested local food. Pizza maker Raffaele Esposito of Pizzeria Brandi created 3 pizzas for the Queen. She declared her favorite to be the one topped with tomato, mozzarella, and basil, conveniently matching the red, white, and green of the Italian flag. Esposito named it Pizza Margherita in her honor, and suddenly pizza had royal approval. Whether or not this story is true, the combination of tomato, mozzarella, and basil did exist before 1889. Described in texts from the 1850s and 1860s. What matters is that by the late 1800s, pizza had evolved into its classic form. Neapolitan pizzaiolos had developed specific techniques, stretching the dough by hand, using San Marzano tomatoes from the volcanic soil around Mount Vesuvius, and baking in extremely hot wood-fired ovens that could cook a pizza in just 90 seconds. These traditions were passed down from father to son with an almost religious devotion. As the 19th century ended, Italy was experiencing massive poverty and political upheaval. Between 1880 and 1920, over 4 million Italians emigrated to America, most from the impoverished South. They crowded into American cities like New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and Chicago, recreating their communities in neighborhoods that became known as Little Italies. And of course, they brought their food with them, including pizza. The first pizzerias in America tell a story of entrepreneurship and adaptation. For decades, historians believed that Gennaro Lombardi opened America's first pizzeria at 53½ Spring Street in New York in 1905. Recent research by pizza historian Peter Regas suggests the real story is more complex. A baker named Filippo Milone likely established several pizzerias in New York and Brooklyn in the 1890s, possibly including the location that would become Lombardi's. What we know for certain is that by the early 1900s, Italian immigrants were making and selling pizza in several American cities. These early American pizzas were different from their Neapolitan ancestors. Coal-fired ovens burned hotter than wood, creating a distinctive char. American pizzaiolos made larger pies to feed bigger appetites. Most importantly, they developed the practice of selling pizza by the slice. Customers would say how much they wanted to spend, and the pizzaiolo would cut an appropriately sized piece. This made pizza accessible even to those who couldn't afford a whole pie, spreading its popularity among the working class. But for the first half of the 20th century, pizza remained largely confined to Italian-American communities. Non-Italians viewed it as ethnic food, something exotic and foreign. Pizzerias were gathering places for Italian immigrants where they could speak their language, meet fellow countrymen, and taste something from home. Famous pizzerias from this era include Totonno's in Coney Island, opened in 1924 by Anthony Pero, who had worked at Lombardi's, and Frank Pepe in New Haven, Connecticut, which opened in 1925 and developed its own distinctive style with coal-fired ovens and minimal cheese. The transformation of pizza from ethnic food to American staple is often attributed to World War II, though this too is more legend than fact. The story goes that American soldiers stationed in Italy discovered pizza and brought their love for it home after the war. In reality, relatively few American troops were stationed in southern Italy where pizza was common, and wartime Naples was so devastated that Neapolitans were reportedly eating fish from the city aquarium. Pizza was hardly readily available to GIs. The real reasons for pizza's post-war explosion were more complex. The 1950s saw massive changes in American society: suburbanization, the rise of automobile culture, and the growth of casual dining. Italian Americans were moving out of urban ethnic enclaves into the suburbs, bringing their food with them. Television spread images of pizza into American homes. Lucille Ball worked in a pizzeria in a famous I Love Lucy episode, and Dean Martin sang "When the Moon Hits Your Eye Like a Big Pizza Pie" in his hit song That's Amore. Two innovations in the 1950s revolutionized pizza and made it truly American. The first was the invention of the gas-fired ceramic deck pizza oven by Ira Nevin, a returning veteran whose family was in the oven business. These ovens were cleaner, more efficient, and easier to mass-produce than traditional brick ovens, making it possible to open pizzerias anywhere. The second was the development of low-moisture mozzarella, which shipped and stored better than fresh mozzarella, allowing pizza to spread beyond areas with Italian cheesemakers. The late 1950s saw the birth of pizza chains, transforming pizza from a regional specialty into a national phenomenon. In 1958, brothers Dan and Frank Carney borrowed $600 from their mother to open the first Pizza Hut in Wichita, Kansas. In 1959, Mike and Marion Illich opened Little Caesars in Garden City, Michigan. Tom Monahan bought a small pizzeria called Dominic's in 1960, later renaming it Domino's. These weren't Italian immigrants preserving tradition, they were American entrepreneurs creating a new fast food industry. Each chain developed its own innovations. Pizza Hut popularized the thick crust pan pizza. Domino's pioneered the 30-minute delivery guarantee. Little Caesars introduced the concept of hot and ready pizzas. These chains standardized pizza, making it consistent and predictable, but also divorced it from its Italian roots. The pizza served at chains bore little resemblance to Neapolitan pizza. It was an entirely American creation. As pizza conquered America, regional styles emerged, each reflecting local tastes and traditions. Chicago deep dish pizza, invented at Pizzeria Uno in 1943, turned pizza into a knife and fork meal with its thick, buttery crust filled like a pie. New York style evolved from the original immigrant pizzas into large, thin crust pies with foldable slices perfect for eating on the go. Detroit style, developed in the 1940s at Buddy's Pizza, used square steel pans borrowed from the auto industry, creating a thick, airy crust with crispy, cheesy edges. California-style pizza emerged in the 1980s when chefs like Wolfgang Puck at Spargo began topping pizzas with gourmet ingredients like goat cheese, arugula, and truffle oil. This started a trend of artisanal pizzas that continues today. Meanwhile, quirky regional variants developed across America. The St. Louis style, with its ultra-thin crust and processed Provel cheese, or Rhode Island's pizza strips served at room temperature with minimal cheese. Pizza's American success story soon went global. American chains expanded internationally, bringing their version of pizza to countries that had never heard of it. Pizza Hut opened in Canada in 1968, Australia in 1970, and Japan in 1973. Each country adapted pizza to local tastes, creating variations that would horrify traditional pizzaiolos. In Japan, pizzas might be topped with mayonnaise, corn, and squid. In Brazil, green peas are a common topping. Sweden has a pizza topped with kebab meat and yogurt sauce. The strangest pizza story might be from Russia, where Mikhail Gorbachev appeared in a Pizza Hut commercial in 1997, crediting pizza with bringing together people of different political views. Or perhaps it's North Korea, where Kim Jong-il was so fond of pizza that he had Italian chefs flown to Pyongyang to train local cooks, opening the country's first pizzeria in 2009. As pizza spread worldwide, a counter-movement emerged in Italy. Neapolitans, watching their cultural heritage transformed into Hawaiian pizza and stuffed crusts, began efforts to preserve authentic pizza. In 1984, the Associazione Verace Pizza Napoletana was founded to protect and promote true Neapolitan pizza. They established strict rules. The dough must be made with specific flour and fermented for precise times. San Marzano tomatoes must be used. The pizza must be cooked in a wood-fired oven at 905 degrees Fahrenheit for 60 to 90 seconds. These efforts culminated in 2009 when Neapolitan pizza was granted protected designation of origin status by the European Union, and in 2017 when the art of Neapolitan pizza making was recognized by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. A food once dismissed as fit only for the poor was now protected as cultural patrimony. The 21st century has seen both the continued industrialization of pizza and a renaissance of traditional methods. On one hand, technology has transformed pizza delivery with apps, GPS tracking, and experiments with drone and robot delivery. Scientists have even developed pizza for astronauts that can last 3 years. On the other hand, a new generation of pizzaiolos has emerged, obsessed with perfecting dough fermentation, sourcing heirloom tomatoes, and importing buffalo mozzarella from Campania. Today, pizza generates over $145 billion globally each year. Americans alone consume 3 billion pizzas annually, about 350 slices per second. It's been estimated that 93% of Americans eat pizza at least once a month. Pizza has become so ubiquitous that it's hard to imagine a world without it. Yet this global dominance is remarkably recent. As late as 1945, most Americans had never heard of pizza. The story of pizza is really several stories woven together. It's a story of poverty and ingenuity, of desperate people making something delicious from simple ingredients. It's a story of immigration and adaptation, of traditions preserved and transformed. It's a story of industrialization and globalization, of how a local specialty can become a global phenomenon. And it's a story that's still being written as new styles emerge and old traditions are rediscovered. From ancient Persian soldiers to Neapolitan street vendors, from Italian immigrants to American entrepreneurs, from wood-fired ovens to microwave pizza, the journey of pizza reflects larger themes in human history. It shows how food travels and transforms, how necessity breeds innovation, how the humblest dishes can conquer the world. Pizza may have been born in Naples, but it belongs to the world now. And while purists may argue about what constitutes real pizza, the truth is that pizza is whatever people want it to be. A simple margarita, or a BBQ chicken with extra cheese, a cultural tradition, or a quick meal, a link to the past, or an opportunity for innovation. The next time you bite into a slice, remember that you're tasting history, thousands of years of human creativity condensed into one perfect combination of bread, sauce, and cheese. Because that's what pizza really is, proof that the simplest ideas are often the best, and that sometimes all it takes to change the world is flour, tomatoes, cheese, and a really hot oven.